Welcome to Just Talking About Jesus. I'm Jan Johnson, a seasoned believer who loves relationships and, just talking about Jesus. Here you'll hear inspiring stories from a woman who went from using meth to starting a ministry in Kenya, or the man who had a life-changing encounter with someone in Home Depot, of all places, or a woman who has endured years of chronic pain after having her gallbladder, spleen, and pancreas removed. Every conversation goes deep into how God has changed lives and brought us to a place of surrender, sharing joys, sorrows, and just life in general. We don't have to go it alone because we can go hand in hand with Jesus on our journey. Jesus desires a relationship with us, with you. He wants to know us intimately. Revelations 12:11 says, "And they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony." That's what I'm talking about. The word of our testimony, just talking about Jesus. Join us each week. Welcome, my friends, to episode 69 of Just Talking About Jesus. Last week, we heard Rob Linton share his extraordinary journey from growing up as a missionary kid in Papua and Indonesia to becoming an engineer with a love for classic cars and motorcycles. He reflected on the adventures and challenges that shaped his faith, including a near-fatal car accident, a daring motorcycle trip through Peru with his father, navigating personal loss, and finding new purpose in retirement. If you missed it, make that your next listen after you listen to this one with Kellen Peterson. Let's be honest. What's your first thought when I say teenagers? Loud, hold up, rebellious, funny, or loving? All of the above? Between dodgeball bruises, slime-covered relay games, and late-night questions about heaven and hell, youth ministry is never boring. But here's the truth. The mess is where God loves to work. Today's guest is Kellen Peterson, youth minister full of energy and a deep love of teens and Jesus. Welcome, everybody, to this episode of Just Talking About Jesus. I have Kellen Peterson with me today. Hello, Kellen.
Hi.
Kellen is a youth pastor at our church, and I just think, what a great job. What amazing, fun, maybe some not so fun, maybe.
Depends on the week.
Little both.
Yeah.
Little both. How did you get started in that?
I got started in youth ministry because when I was a kid, I went to church. My family grew up in the church. And when I was in middle school, high school, I started to kind of get into a lot of trouble. And the punishment for getting in trouble is I had to go to youth group. And so I was there, week in and week out. And I know that I probably presented as the trouble kid, which I think meant some of the leaders kind of steered clear of me. So throughout most of the time that I was at this youth group, I didn't really feel like anybody really talked to me. I didn't really feel connected or plugged in. So then I went to college and actually wound up dropping out of college after 2 years and worked on a cruise ship in Alaska and came back and decided that I was going to go to church, not because my parents told me I had to, but because I wanted to, because I kind of wanted to see what there was to this whole God thing. And I remember kind of having a bargain with God in my head and saying, all right, I'll say yes to anything. I'll give you 6 months. And let's see if you're there, you're listening, you're paying attention.
Give you a time frame.
I was a little bit very arrogant of me. And in 6 months, I wound up not only helping at the church, I got asked to help out with kids ministry, then be an intern for youth ministry. And I wound up dating Carolyn, who we've now been married for about 13 years. And so one of the reasons youth ministry in particular drew me is I thought, man, when I was in middle school and high school, no one really paid attention to me and I want to do better. And so I got involved because I wanted to make sure the kids that were kind of on the fringe, those that were sitting by themselves, had someone to talk to and they felt like the church was a place that they belonged to.
And so isn't that interesting how God starts, uses your temperament, your personality, your maybe little rebellion or whatever it is to turn it into something good.
Yeah, that's often the case. And I've found that one of the great things is I have a lot of patience for kids as a result of being that kid myself. And so I always tell them, I said, look, you need to realize I had to go through your age to get to the one that I'm at right now. And I know the
And you
shenanigans.
survived.
Yeah, I know the shenanigans and the things that you're trying to do. And I just want to let you know, I used to do them. I used to do them better. So,
You can't beat me.
yeah.
I already done this and I perfected it.
Yeah. I actually ran into a guy who was one of my youth leaders at a different church. So we attended a church on Sunday mornings, and then there was a different church, a Calvary Chapel down the street, that did a Friday night youth group. So we'd go there, and I ran into him years later. And I said, "Hey, how's it going?" He said, "Great." He said, "What are you up to?" I said, "Actually, I'm going to seminary." And he goes, "That's great. I always just thought you'd be in jail." And he was serious. And I thought, yeah, based off of who I was at that stage in life, that's not an unreasonable assumption. So,
I'm thinking there might have been a little pause before he made any comment, kind of like, oh.
yeah. Oh, yeah. He was delighted, I think is the correct term. He was baffled, but a little delighted to see. And that's what I think about with kids now. I know that some of these kids present as problems. And I think, man, if I had been a leader looking at high school me, I would have thought, man, that kid is going nowhere. But that's the power of hope. And God got a hold of my heart. And yeah, so I enjoy what I get to do.
I think, I look at some kids that I taught, and it's just like, oh my gosh, what is going to happen to them? What is going to, and then I meet them as adults and they're community members and they have a job, a lot of them working, driving big trucks or doing guy things, whatever
Yeah,
with their hands and that kind of stuff that, where school wasn't exactly the right setting for them and whatever, but they turned out all right. And it's just kind of like, oh, I love this,
yeah,
to see that in advance, what God already knew.
yeah. And that is, again, the transformative power of the gospel. I mean, that's because without Christ, I would still be that guy. But because of Christ, my life took a very different path. And so I always tell people, like, I'll run into some of my friends, and I think that they can sense, especially some of my childhood friends, how different I was back then to who I am now. I'm like, if there's anything that's good in me, it's not me. But yeah.
If you break it down, what would you say specifically because of Christ? What does that mean in your life? How would you break that down?
Mm. I think that I think my relationship with Christ has taught me to be a lot more compassionate with kids. I, you go through all these different things and you meet kids and you hear their stories. And I think some kids present as very tough cases. And then you find out what's going on in the home. You find out what's going on behind the scenes, and it gives you a lot more empathy. And so then you learn to see people the way that Christ sees us. And Christ loves each one of us individually. And so it becomes a lot harder to just dismiss kids as bad kids. Instead, you start saying, well, yeah, I can see you've got absent parent figures, or you're coming from a home where there's abuse, or I don't know, the myriad of different issues. And yeah, an empathy grows in you. And when you recognize how much Christ loves us, you become more prone to share that with other people. So it's a slow process.
Nobody's born a bad kid.
I don't think so. No, I think kids have inclinations to do things, and good parenting can help some of that. And then the rest of it, man, it's got to be a relationship with Jesus.
Yeah. 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 I mean, what is it? What's better than being able to reach youth, to begin with and just starting out at the beginning, say, hey, look at them in the eye.
Hmm.
You're valued. I see you,
Yeah,
I care about you. And I even care about you when you're goofy,
especially when they're, yeah.
when you're not the perfect kind of kid, and I'm willing to walk through that with you as long as it takes to build that relationship.
Yeah, that's what I think. I don't know where all my students will go once they leave the ministry, but I know at least for one point in time, they had an adult couple, me and my wife, who knew them, who cared about them, and who loved them, and who hopefully were good representatives of Christ. And so wherever their faith journey does or doesn't take them, at least they can look back and say, well, I know I at least went to a church with people who really believed in Jesus, and it seemed to make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes that's the best that we can do. Sometimes it's planting the seeds, but I think most of the time we're just tending to what's already there. And so Christ can yield a harvest.
Mm-hmm. I talked to, really, literally hundreds of people with their testimonies and things. And a lot of them, did you grow up in a Christian home? Nope. But I had, somebody picked me up to go to Sunday school, or somebody took me to BBS, or somebody took me to young life or to whatever, where I never even heard of any of that before. And that was the first time. And that's what I clung to. That maybe had some time in between.
Yeah.
But but that's the one thing that I knew it was like an anchor,
Yeah.
Like that. And what a privilege to be that person that can be speaking that truth, that God chose you.
Yeah.
Don't you sometimes feel like wow, in some situations, don't you just kind of feel like an overwhelming chose me to have this impact or to do?
Yeah, absolutely. I think about the twists and turn of my life and what I thought when I was in college, I wanted to be a movie director. That's what I wanted to be. In fact, there exists a whole slew of terrible movies that I made when I was younger, and I was pretty sure what path my life was going to take me on. I remember telling the guy who asked me to be an intern, his name is Danny, and he said, "Would you be interested in interning with the church?" I said, "Sure, as long as you understand that I am never going to do ministry full time because I want to do something that makes money." And I just remember that very distinctly. But then, yeah, God just got a hold of my life. And I've worked over 30, 40 different jobs. I delivered packages for UPS. This will date myself. I used to sell internet at Circuit City. Um, so I did all these different jobs, and ministry was the only thing that I felt compelled to come back to. And so, yeah, there were just moments where I get welcomed into the intimacy of people's lives, or people will confide something in me. And I'm just so grateful that God had that for me, because if I left to my own devices, I would have done something very different. Maybe more profitable, but profitable is, you could define that in a lot of different ways.
Exactly. Right. The riches of Christ.
Yeah.
What do you see in kids? I'm sure you see a lot of the same things as you experienced when you were a kid. What are some of the challenges that you're seeing with kids today?
It is different today. I think there is an underlying notion from some people of a certain generation that think, well, kids are kids. Like, they are, but you don't understand the challenges they're facing are just so vastly different. The proliferation of the internet and social media, I know I sound like I'm 100 years old when I say it, but the truth is, these kids are getting bullied sometimes by people who live on the other side of the world over nothing. And they are so hyper conscious of how they are perceived by complete strangers, and it adds an immense amount of stress to them. In addition to that, I mean, they just have access to things we just didn't have access to growing up. I mean, when I was a kid, if you wanted to look at dirty pictures, you had to know a kid down the street who'd sell you his dad's magazines. Now, it's just not the case. And so they're just being bombarded with so much nonsense. And it's really, really tough for a lot of them. Yeah, and I think what happens with some of that too is they've lost some of the ability to connect with people, because they can be so focused and glued to their screens, they've forgot what it's like just to engage with the people around them. And that's not all kids. Most of the kids I know are really wonderful and great at that. But I do think that the generation as a whole is suffering from a loneliness epidemic that spawns from building communities or connecting with communities that are not based off of where they live or who they go to school with. It's these niche communities that they're finding online. And I think it's making some kids really lonely and less likely to connect with people. So I also think that there's a lot of stuff that's happening in the media right now that is very negative towards Christianity. And so the church is no longer the safe place it used to be. It's seen as a place full of hypocrites and, depending on who you ask, pedophiles, and they just have a lot of really negative ideas of the church. And so I think it's hard for them to build community there too. And so forming a relationship with Christ is not as easy as I think it used to be when I was younger.
Mhm. Mhm. And throw in gender identity.
Oh man, it is a huge thing. I think it's a very clever tactic of the enemy,
For sure.
because he sees that we were created in God's image. And so he's now going after the literal image that God created us in. If I've got kids that come to my groups and they're presenting as something other,
Mm.
it doesn't faze me in the slightest. I'll usually just go up to them and say, well, what is your preferred name? And I'll just call them by that. Because my assumption is that those kids who come, they don't have a relationship with Christ. And the worst thing I could do is alienate them from step one, is to make them feel like the church is a hostile place where they're going to be judged. So my goal is to try to get to know them, to try to see past maybe what they present, try to see them as people, and then get them to a point where they don't place their identity in anything other than Jesus.
Right.
And I think when that happens, I think people are prone to find security, they're prone to find comfort, and they're prone to see themselves the way that God sees them, which is who he created them to be.
But that takes, you and your role, but it really takes each of us to look into the eyes of somebody else and just see, I'm not going to see all this other stuff. I'm just going to see you.
Yeah.
I'm going to see you. And you can tell me about you as much as you want to tell me, so that, as much as you want to let me in and whatever. And I'm going to be okay with whatever that is. I'm going to move forward with you. We'll walk this walk together until we can really get to the point. I think it's part of the earning your right to be heard.
Yeah, it's a good young life motto. I think that some people get daunted when they think of working with kids, but I'll be honest, they are phenomenally simple. All kids want is they just want someone to see them and to love them. That's it. All the other stuff that they present, I've had so many kids that have tried to test me, who have tried to throw up barriers to see how I would react. They've been unkind to me, or they've said mean things to me, and been doing this long enough that it doesn't bother me. When I was younger, I might have responded in kind because I was less mature then. But now when I see kids doing that, what I really see is a broken kid throwing up a defense mechanism because they're terrified of being vulnerable and letting somebody in. And so, man, when I see that, I just think, okay, cool. Just tell me. Then I just kind of let it skate off of me. I don't really let it bother me. And I've been surprised at how easy it is just to navigate past that stuff and just to try to actually listen to them. I had a girl in my youth group, this was in Medford, who started telling me she came and she was really trying to bully me and say a lot of mean things to me, and I just kind of laughed it off because I don't care. And after a while, when she realized that it wasn't going to work, then she started being vulnerable and honest with me. And I remember we were in the youth room, and this had been a couple months after she had come. She goes, I want to tell you something, but you got to promise not to tell anybody. And I said, no, I won't do that. I said, because there could be things that you tell me that I can't keep a secret. Yeah. That threw her for a loop. But eventually she opened up to me and she talked to me about how she'd been the victim of sexual abuse. And we did have to call CPS and sit down with the authorities. But I think what happened was, after months of kind of testing the waters to see, can I push him away?
Could I be safe? Could you be safe enough?
Yeah, and realizing that, it's not going to faze me. Then she felt like she could actually tell me something really serious. And I was really grateful that she did. So like I said, kids are they really are simple. They just want someone who sees them, who loves them. I think that's adults too, but it's especially true of kids.
Yeah, no, totally. And those will be defining moments for them years later when they're telling their testimony, and they say, there was this one guy that was leading us in youth group, with this Kellen guy. I think his name was Kellen. No.
Yeah.
That made a difference in my life.
Yeah. I feel, grateful to be part of that.
I kind of think that this is my picture. Who knows? Because it's probably not totally scriptural. But I think that when there was, we have the sponsor kids in Guatemala. And so when we visit different communities or something, so they put down this whole, what they call an alfombra, which is pine needles and flowers and whatever. It's like a carpet going into their community for you, with all kinds of balloons, all these things, confetti and all this stuff, and all of the mothers are on each side and they're clapping and they, are just grinning ear to ear that you're there. They're just like so excited. That's what I think heaven's going to be like. But those people are going to be those people that you've had an effect on.
Yeah.
Besides your family, relatives, whatever. Right. This is my, it's like, God's going to be at the and then Jesus is going to be going, yep, that's my guy. That's my girl, and they're all going to be going, you're here. I'm so glad you're here finally, That's
the wonderful thing about ministries sometimes too, is that, for some of these kids, they come and go, and I don't know. I have no idea if anything I say makes a difference or a dent. Maybe they hear a Bible story, or maybe they've just been, they're on their phone the whole time. I don't know. But I am confident that heaven is going to be chock full of people that we thought that they barely remembered us, or they had a very minimal encounter with, that we come to find out had a really profound moment with. I think about, for me, when I was a kid, I was a freshman, and I went to Arkansas to do political campaigning through this Christian organization. It was very strange. And I still remember the guy's name was Jay Dickey, and he's running for the House of Representatives in Little Rock, Arkansas. And the guy who was running the trip, his name was Ned Ryan. His dad was actually Jim Ryan, who was an Olympic athlete. And so Ned Ryan was kind of our point person. And I was from California, so I was immediately like a mini celebrity with the people from Arkansas. In fact, they just called me California.
They probably just already knew you were going to be a film
Right.
director, and that's
They,
where that.
yeah, they truthfully, they kept asking, which celebrities do you live next to? Like, none. California's huge. But so what happened was, as a result of me just being that, some kids really glommed onto me. And for some reason, there's like one kid that just hated me instantly. I don't know why. So I came back to our cabin one night and he's in my bunk in my sleeping bag with this big grin on his face. And I'm looking at him thinking, what's happening? Well, turns out he jumped in my sleeping bag buck naked. And so he's doing this to sort of mess with me.
Yeah.
And so I thought, yeah, I'm going to get even on him. This is, fight fire with fire. So I went to the bathroom and I grabbed his toothbrush and I scrubbed the inside of all the toilets. And I put his toothbrush back.
Oh,
And so that night, pro tip.
that's way worse.
Oh, it is. So pro tip, if there's ever a crowd watching you brush your teeth, don't do it. So everyone's kind of watching. He picks up his toothbrush and as soon as he brushes his teeth, everyone starts going wild. And when he found out what had happened, well, he started crying. And the difference was for no reason of my own, the kids liked me, but they didn't really like him. So what he had done to me actually rallied kids against him. So when I did that to him, I was kind of seen as the hero. He was seen as the bad guy. And I just hadn't thought through all these things. So I still remember Ned Ryan pulls me aside, and he and I have this very serious talk. And he said, Kellen, whether or not you realize it, people look up to you to be a leader. It's up to you to decide what type of leader you want to be. And it was a very brief but profound conversation that even at that point in my life started shaping me and making me think about the type of person God wanted me to be. So I'm fairly convinced that Ned doesn't even really remember that conversation, but I am sure that when I get to heaven, he's someone I want to find and say, just so you know, those words made a huge difference for me.
So true. Whew. Wow, that'd be like a gut punch.
It was. And he did it was so unique what he did because instead of just yelling at me or pouring scorn on me, instead he used this as an opportunity to lift me up. And I will never forget just the careful way that he managed that. Instead of punishing me, he put a higher calling on me. I thought, oh, dang. All right, well, now I want to live up to that expectation. All right. Here I thought it was a stupid prank. And then God was like, no, actually, you need to learn a serious lesson. I'm like, okay.
But that's also truth that you can speak into your kids.
Yeah, there have been
the same.
Yeah, there have definitely been moments where I've been fortunate enough to have that example be at the forefront of my mind when I see a kid do something and I think, okay, I can tear them down and I can show them the error of their ways, or I can do to this kid what was done to me and use this as an opportunity to help lift them up. And hopefully it's what I do.
Yeah, yeah. Comes with a little maturity, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, I've been doing ministry in one form or another for a little over 18 years at this point. So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. What's a typical youth night look like? I mean, typical.
Yeah. Typical youth. So, yeah, typical youth night, our youth group, we do dinner. And that's a great opportunity just to sit and talk with kids. And then we usually play some sort of a game. Then we do...
Because you only have a few games.
Yeah. Only... that I was told when I started in youth ministry, you have to have the capacity to either lead games or lead worship. So I chose games. So I'll run a game for kids and usually jump in there and play myself. And then we'll do a teaching, which on our Sunday nights, which is our youth nights, will range about 15, 20 minutes. And then they go into small group for the majority of the time. Our Sunday morning program is a little more like Sunday school, and I usually teach about 30 to 40 minutes, just kind of depending on that. So, yeah, a little bit of a different feel. I feel like Sunday mornings are a good opportunity for those who are already disciples to grow deeper, and our youth nights are an opportunity for maybe someone who's less familiar with the gospel to come and get a little bit of Jesus to hopefully take that next step.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel like you've got places where you can train some of the youth to be leaders in,
Yeah, we're getting there. I think it just depends. I think I'm okay. I think I'm good at identifying potential leaders. And so usually I kind of take my time getting to know kids. The rascally ones. Yeah, honestly. Yeah. No, not always them, but sometimes, yeah. They've done research now and they've shown it takes on average 12 to 18 months for most kids to trust an adult that they don't know. So a lot of what I do at the beginning is just putting in that groundwork, getting to know them, spending time with them, trying to connect with them outside of church. So I go to their baseball games, I go to, their track meets, whatever. And then once I get to know them I think the best way to raise up leaders is a personal invitation. And that's what Jesus did, right? He went around and, he called individuals. And so I try to model that a little bit. And if I've got a student here or there that I think has a capacity to step more into leadership, I'll have a conversation with them and say, hey, I think you should be doing more. So I've gotten a couple students who have shown a phenomenal aptitude and done some really cool things as a result of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And just seeing, speaking into their life.
Yeah.
Because some kids don't have anybody in their life that's speaking any sort of love to them at all, in any capacity. I mean, they go to school and they're a great child. Nobody sees them. Nobody talks to them. No does any, whatever. They just, oh, he's a good kid, but he just so it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, speaking that truth. So you've been doing a little studying lately.
Yeah. Well, I like being a learner and
Lifetime learner.
lifetime learner. Yeah. So we'll see. Like I said, in my time in ministry, I've done kids, youth, young adults, and I was a lead pastor for about 2 years. And so I've really enjoyed wearing a bunch of different hats and doing a bunch of different ministry. And so I don't know where God will call me next, but I figure learning as much as I can about His Word can't hurt, no matter where He sends me.
So, like theology, what kind of things you're taking?
Yeah, so I'm struggling through Greek. I'm not a languages guy. Some people gravitate towards it. I would rather do anything else, but I have found it really helpful. I find I kind of catch myself incorporating some Greek phrases even when I'm teaching my students, because there is a genuine benefit for knowing these things, and so it's definitely deepened my study. Yeah, I'm taking some theology classes, history of the church. So I'm currently working on a second master's degree. So I've got one down and figured, so much fun the first time around, might as well go again.
Why not? Yeah, keep going. Hmm. What would be something you might say to parents about how they approach their sharing their faith with their kids, or encouraging them in it, or whatever, their walk?
Yeah, I mean, the most faith growth happens in the home. I think about the amount of time that I have with students. If students come to all of the things that we do, we've got a Sunday morning program, a Sunday night program, and often a midweek program. But I mean, that is a very finite amount of time versus the amount of time that kids are with their families. So for families to be intentional in building their students' faith journey and talking with them about these things is of paramount importance. I think, I mentioned going to this church and not really feeling like I connected. I think the reason I have such a strong faith is a testament to my parents. And I mean, both of them were very sincere about who Jesus was, who He meant to them, who they wanted me to be, how God saw me. And so really the church is supplementary in that respect. We want to come alongside parents, we want to come alongside families, but we're not doing the heavy liftings. The parents are. And if the church is doing the heavy lifting, well, that's because it's one of those families that is going through something. Mm-hmm. But hopefully, ideally, it's parents, grandparents, family members that are doing most of the work. And then the church exists for them to explore maybe a few other avenues, or maybe talk to somebody that knows maybe just a little bit more than mom and dad about a specific issue. But man, for parents, be intentional about the conversations you have. Be intentional, oh my gosh, about praying with your kids. One of the best things parents can do is model healthy prayer. And not just praying before meals, but praying when it comes to significant family events, praying for major things. My parents prayed for me when I went off to college, when I moved away from California. I mean, those are powerful moments. So parents, pray with your kids and talk with them. I think another good thing that parents can do is make sure that their students feel like nothing is taboo, that they can talk and be honest, which means if a kid comes to a parent and they say, Mom, I'm wrestling with gender identity, the worst thing you could do is freak out or shame them or put them down. The best thing you could do is try to approach it with love and understanding, because if you open those doors, then the kid is going to feel comfortable more and more often talking about some of these really big, heavy things. If you slam that door shut, or if you make them feel like a pariah, or you make them feel like they're gross or weird or unwanted, they will bottle up instantly. And that door, once shut, is very difficult to open. Another thing too, part of just being a wise parent is know what your kids are looking at when it comes to their phones and their computers. I have had several instances of parents who have, endeavoring to be good parents, have investigated what their kids' online activity was and saved a couple kids from absolute disasters. So be proactive with that stuff. It's real. Know the dangers. Know what's going on. and set up safeguards.
Yeah.
I think that is so important for parents to set up healthy safeguards for their kids.
Yeah. Yeah. Kellen, thank you so much.
Yeah,
This has
absolutely.
just been, enriching,
Thank
delightful,
you.
good advice.
I love, and I'll just say one more thing as a bit of encouragement for anybody listening. Again, I love youth ministry, and I have grown immensely as a result of my time in there. And I think one of the best things the church can do is invest in the next generation. So if anybody's listening and thinking about getting involved in youth ministry, first off, as someone who's been doing youth ministry for a long time, if I ever have a good qualified person who comes up and says, I'd like to help out with youth, I'm like in tears. I'm like, yes, please, thank you. So that would be one encouragement. But just, I think for people to understand, you don't have to have a degree in theology. You don't have to have all the answers. All that you need is to love God, love kids, and it really helps if you're teachable. And that's it.
I think God could work with that.
I think you can. Yeah.
Thanks.
All right. Well, thank you, Jen.
I hope you got a few chuckles in. But really, Kellen has such a great balance of fun and looking into the souls of young people. Wish my kids were young again so that they could be under his tutelage. Almost makes me want to do that role. Almost. One scripture that really encourages me is Proverbs 22:6. Start children off on the way they should go, and even when they are old, they'll not turn from it. Now, if you've ever been in youth ministry, you know it can feel messy. Sometimes you wonder if they're even listening between axe throwing and snacks. But this verse reminds me, it's not wasted. What we plant in them now, those seeds of truth and love, they stay with them. We may not always see the fruit right away, but God promises it will grow. I look forward to being with all of you again next week. P.S. If you or someone you know might be a great interview, leave me a message. Let me know. Until next time. Do you have a friend or relative that would find value in this episode? Please share it. And you can let them know that if they'd prefer to watch, I always put these episodes on YouTube. So check that out in the show notes. And if you watch on YouTube, consider subscribing, because just as when you subscribe to this podcast and get notification when new episodes are out, the same will happen if you subscribe to my YouTube channel. Just Talking About Jesus. And then you won't miss an episode. Speaking of subscribing, are you getting my newsletters? These not only tell the guest stories, but also include pictures and links to the website and YouTube. I also add a little about my life, and who doesn't want to know that?